If you struggle to stay erect during the deadlift, chances are you also struggle to stay erect in the bedroom. Hi, I'm Patrick, and I also suffer from ED, but at least I deadlift over 770 pounds in competition.
Through the course of the meet, especially by the time you get to 30-10 deadlifts, and especially at a big meet like this.
Correct.
Patrick Maguire would know all about the energy management. He's following up with a 20-kilo jump to 350 kilo. 771 on the bar. Wow.
350. Understanding the
And I'm here to help you solve your issues. And I'm not just going to tell you, get some Cialis and leave your wife because she's too old and dried up. I'm here to teach you about lat and core cueing for the deadlift. One of the most common things you see in people who struggle with their deadlifts is an overabundance of rounding in their back. This is because we have a lot of cues associated with cueing your lats and cueing your core that just make no sense. Things like take the slack out of the bar, things like chest up, keep your chest proud, things along that route are trying to cue your lats and your core, but they're not really getting down to the nitty and gritty of things. Think of your body like a fishing rod while you're deadlifting. If you have a rigid body, there's not going to be a lot of slack and pull, and you're going to be able to jerk that rod out of the water. But if your upper back and your core are soft, you're going to have a lot of bend, and you're going to have a lot of give to it. Now, when you're fishing, you want that give because it doesn't jerk the fish and it doesn't tear the hook out of the fish's mouth. But we're not fishing, we're deadlifting. You want to tear that bar off of the ground. So you want that rigidity in your upper back and in your core to keep your spine not only safe, but also so that you can deadlift a lot heavier and a lot safer too. Whether or not you deadlift sumo with your legs wide out, or you actually have testicles and you pull conventional, the back cueing and core cueing for the deadlift are going to be the same. The only difference is when you're pulling sumo, you're going to have a lot more hip hinging and you're going to feel a little more aggressive while doing these cues, especially in the core. So what you want to do is you want to grab the bar and pinch your scaps and flex your lats. And by flexing your lats, you're pinching your scaps and you're kind of pulling your lats down, elongating your arms, and you feel a lot of tension in your back, in those wings that you've been developing over hours and hours of doing rows, lat pull downs, or any sort of back variation. What this does is it provides a lot of rigidity and support to your upper spine, and it's going to reduce the amount of give and softness in your upper spine, and you won't be bending over as much. You won't have as much rounding in your upper back. The roundness in your lower back is caused by looseness in your core. The way that you want to brace, which is contracting your core and providing that stability and rigidity in your core, is you're going to want to push out as if you're trying to be as fat as possible and then kind of contract as if you're about to get punched in the stomach. So when you put it together, it looks a bit like this if you're a man. Notice how once the bar left the ground, there wasn't any tilting. This will also allow the bar to start moving at the same time that you initiate the pull with your hips. What is going on in terms of increasing your deadlift with these cues mathematically is you go from something that's kind of sloping and ramping up as your body kind of folds and stretches into a position with a nice rounded curve versus something kind of sharp, but you've already got the rigidity in your body that the slope of the line is a little sharper and it's a little more rigid and the maximum is a little bit higher. So if you look at the integration, the space under the curve, the slowly ramping rounding has a lot less area under the curve as opposed to the sharp height and go. And if you want to bring that idea, that little integration, the little bit of calculus that we discussed right there into the realm of things that you kind of know and see nearly every day, is if you throw a pillow on the ground, it doesn't have a lot of elasticity. Your spine, your core does not have a lot of elasticity. So you throw a pillow on the ground, it kind of just flops there and it's kind of flaccid. But if you take a ball bearing, something that's not elastic, because both of these can't be elastic because elastic gets into other kinds of K, whatever, stretch length physics that we don't need to talk about right now. If you take a ball bearing and bounce it, it's going to bounce back up because the amount of time that's in contact with the floor is reduced because it's got that sharp curve going on. Now, if you've ever tried to pose in the mirror in your free time because you think that you're starting to look big, but like, let's be honest, none of us really are, and you've tried to do a back double lat, so you're trying to make your back as big as possible so that you're flexing and trying to make it look big, that is very similar to what's going on when you're flexing your lats going into a deadlift. Except instead of having your arms up, you're pulling up, and it kind of makes it a little easier to lock in there. You almost want your upper body as locked out as possible when deadlifting, especially in the sumo, as possible, because that reduces the amount of load on your lower back, and it's a little safer, and your core doesn't have to work as hard. It's not going to be as fatigued, and it's not going to be fatigue dependent based on what you've already done squats and bench wise. So the timing of when you use these cues where you get a proud chest, which basically means sit back and get the lats all cued out, which, I mean, the cue doesn't really make sense. What you're doing is you're setting your lats, you pinch your scaps, and you flex your lats, kind of elongating your arms. And then when you cue your core, you're trying to get as fat as you can get. You expand your core and then contract it as if you're about to get punched. So the timing of when you do this is actually important. So the way that you set up for a deadlift, you've got your feet in position and you grab the bar. Some people, they like to just dive bomb down to the bar and deadlift up like that. This is not wrong, but no method of doing this is incorrect. It's just as long as you cue your lats and your core, you're doing it right. But the consistency might not be as there as the other method that I'm going to talk about. Lifters like John Hack will dive bomb to the ground, and that works for him, but it's not going to work for everyone. Don't try to imitate your heroes. The more consistent method is you grab the bar. You're taking more steps. You grab the bar, you bring your legs back, your butt up, and then that makes space for you to go and get air into your core. You breathe in, whether it's nasally or orally, into your core, making yourself as fat as possible. Contract that as if you're about to get punched in the stomach, and then you cue your lats. You get that lat tightness. You pinch your scaps, bring your lats down and flex them. And at this point, that's when you see the bar. If it's not heavy enough for the lifter, it'll start to float or rise a little bit. So this is 135, and it's going to do that with me. So once you have your lats and your core set, I like to kind of think of setting my lats as pulling myself into the bar. After that, you want to push your knees over the bar and sit back onto your heels. You want to kind of not be on your heels, but sit back into your heels because your head is going to be over your toes, but you're going to want to bring that back with your lats and your just upper body kind of cognizance, and you're going to want to sit back onto your heels so that you don't get onto your toes. Getting onto your toes is when a lot of things, the bar will get out away from you, and then all of these cues are going to kind of decompose, and you're going to be out of position, your back's going to round, and you're going to look really ugly getting up, and you're going to have trouble locking it out because when the bar gets over and you lock it out, your upper back is out of position and you have to re-engage your lats and lock it back in, and that's not good. So when I say you want your upper body as locked out as possible at the beginning, you want that tightness in your lats to be throughout the entire lift so that you're not trying to engage this here, engage that there, because when you're under a load, it's way harder to do that. So let me go step by step through. So you grab the bar, you bring your hips back, Now, you might have a little better bringing your hips back. I'm just immobile and fat. So grab the bar, bring your hips back, breathe into your belly, pull into the bar, setting your lats by pinching your scaps, and then kind of elongating your arms, flexing your lats. And then you bring your knees forward, back onto your heels, and you deadlift. So let's see that in full motion. There you have it. Now, there are tons of super complex cues when it comes to deadlifting, and a lot of it is just hyper-focusing on a nuance of the deadlift. Assuming things go out of whack while you're deadlifting, it's meant to fix those things. But 90% of your deadlift comes from your setup and your initiation for the pull. Everything else should kind of fall into place after you started deadlifting. So if you're out of position when you start the pull, you're going to be out of position for the entirety of the pull. And it's going to be really hard for you to lock it out. If you are really tight and in good position when you're doing the deadlift, when you're setting up the deadlift, you're going to have good speed off the ground. And then you get into different cues like the more advanced cue that I've been personally working in my own deadlift recently, where once you get to the knees, you kind of jerk your head back almost like someone's pulling a ponytail. And that's going to bring your hips forward and help you lock out, build up speed and lock out. But you can go really far with just a really good, strong base, really strong off the floor. Because if you deadlift fast enough, you don't have time to be weak at lockout. Because if you pop it off the floor fast enough, it becomes a projectile in motion and you kind of just guide it to lockout at that point. So if you have enough power off the floor, if you have enough consistency with your setup, you can deadlift really fast, really strong, and be a lot stronger than your weakest point because you don't have time to be weak at those specific points throughout the deadlift. But then you start to work those weak points, and it's kind of like adding thrusters while you're deadlifting. You want the initial launch to be the strongest point, and you want it to be the most consistent point. Otherwise, your astronauts are going to blow up. And you don't want your deadlift to blow up. Your little astronauts are your spinal column and discs. So I hope this was helpful. I'm out of breath for absolutely no reason. I'm just really excited to share this information with you guys and hopefully cure your ED, erectile dysfunction, when it comes to deadlifting. There's got to be a better term for that. But staying with your upper body upright, all those cues, take the slack out of the bar. That is setting your lats. When it comes to sumo, it also means setting your hips as well. Pull the slack out of the bar, set your lats. Set your core, brace hard. Belly into the belt, that's half of a correct cue where a lot of people really haven't broken that down. You expand and push into the belt and you contract, pushing outwards almost horizontally through your obliques as if you're getting ready to get punched in the stomach. And then you set your lats, you set your core, you drive your knees over the bar, sit back onto your heels, and then you deadlift. And then everything that happens after it leaves the floor, Jesus, take the wheel. But most importantly, get the bar off the ground as fast as possible. I've been rambling too long. The ADHD and autism is speaking way too hard today. I'm leaving you guys. Be stronger. Stop being a disappointment. Go be stronger. Make me proud, okay? Make Daddy proud. Daddy's out.